Relationship advice. Updated. My 27 female, half-sister, 8 female, is very violent towards me and hates me. I have to babysit her, but I'm going to give birth in 3 weeks and I can't take it anymore. Original story. My parents divorced when I was about 10 years old. My dad simply left and I've never heard from him ever since then. When I was around the age of 15, my mom met a new guy and married him. He and my mom have 2 children together, my half-sisters, 10 female and 8 female. The 10-year-old is a lovely girl and I really like spending time with her, but the 8-year-old is a literal demon. My mom recently got a new job, so both my mom and her husband are working in the afternoon now, which means that someone needs to take care of the girls when they come home from school. I was asked by my mom to babysit them and I agreed. She helped me a lot during my pregnancy, so I wanted to do her a favor. Here's where things get complicated. My half-sisters are very spoiled and basically get away with everything. However, the older can behave herself properly, whereas the 8-year-old cannot. She screams for hours, bites me, hits me, scratches me, and literally hates me. I wish I knew why, but I really don't. She has always behaved that way towards me even though I've always been nice to her. Last night, she even called me a witch and then screamed herself hoarse for 4 hours. Yes, 4 full hours of screaming. The younger sister's violent behavior is stressing me out really bad, and I wish I didn't have to babysit her, but I promised my mom I would do it. My mom and her husband know of her violent behavior towards me, but they don't see a problem with it because they experience her tantrums as well. She's significantly less violent towards my mom and her husband, at least when I'm there, but she shows a very similar behavior. My husband, 29 male, is constantly in a state of distress because he wants me to rest at home instead of babysit my half-sisters at my mom's house. He's not happy about this situation at all, but I can't stop babysitting my half-sisters because there is no other option. My mom can afford a professional babysitter, but all of us agree that that's just not a safe option during a pandemic. What am I supposed to do? I can't keep babysitting, but I also can't stop right now because someone has to watch the girls. I really can't take this anymore. I'm tired and stressed out, and on top of that, I'm going to give birth in 3 weeks. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Your half-sister needs help, a kind of help you cannot provide. If your mom can afford a babysitter and won't do anything to prevent you from being hit, then she will have to pay for a babysitter. You are under no obligation to put yourself and your child in danger. What if she hurts your baby? You are already too stressed. And honestly, your baby comes first. It's going to be a hard conversation, but you have to tell your mom. Your mom and his partner are enablers, and if they really love their child, they should have her talk to a therapist. She shouldn't be forcing that on a babysitter either. OMG, that child needs serious mental help. This is nowhere near normal for a child to do, especially an 8-year-old. This is not your problem. You need to stop babysitting. Either your mom changes her schedule around or her husband does, or one of them quits. I personally would have quit to first say your half-sister laid her hands on you. I was waiting for this comment. Perhaps there's an unknown diagnosis on the spectrum, or perhaps the child has experienced some trauma. Could just be being raised not knowing the word no. Who knows? But she needs evaluated. As a nurse who works with a violent child in home care, please remove yourself from this situation before you are hurt. Also, I doubt very highly a professional sitter will stick around long with the above-described behavior either. What is your mother and father's childcare plan for once you give birth and are not able to babysit anymore? I was wondering that too. They will at least temporarily have to find an alternative, so why not make the alternative the permanent solution? OP, I'm so sorry you're having to experience this on top of being pregnant and on top of a pandemic. I think you did the best you could, and no one should fault you for wanting to back out, despite the previous arrangement made. Please discuss this with your mother, and let her know that your half-sister's behaviors have crossed many boundaries, and that you simply cannot continue for the sake of your health, your unborn baby's health, both physical and mental. Also, as others have said, your half-sister could benefit from therapy. And now for the update. I would like to thank everyone for the great advice. Most, if not all of the comments, highly suggested to stop babysitting my half-sisters, so I stopped. It's kind of funny now that the title of my post says, I'm going to give birth in 3 weeks because I went into labor only 3 days after posting that. Personally, I believe that the stress from babysitting my sisters caused the early labor, but I'm not 100% sure. The birth was okay and my baby is healthy. Well, but here's the unpleasant part. I have to stop having contact with my mom and my stepdad. They wanted me to continue babysitting despite me telling them that it's unsafe for me at this point. 2 days after I gave birth, my mom asked me to babysit my sisters again. It resulted to a horrible fight because I said no, and my husband had to kick out my mom out of our house. My husband is very relieved that I have ended contact with my parents and don't babysit my sisters anymore. He's an amazing father and supports me a lot because he knows that ending contact wasn't something I really wanted. I'm not planning to never have contact with my parents again, but I need some peace and quiet at least until the end of this year. Again, thanks for all the advice. I'll make sure that my sister 8 female will get the help that she needs, but now I need to focus on my own baby. Now, for some top comments. Nothing like someone demanding you babysit when you're 2 days postpartum to reveal that you weren't being the jerk. They were. Right? I wouldn't ask a new mom to pour me a glass of water when she already had a pitcher out. Imagine asking one to babysit. And she apparently showed up at Topi's house too? Mom is completely off her rockers. 2 days after I gave birth, my mom asked me to babysit my sisters again. Well, that just proves that her expectations were completely unreasonable and selfish. Yeah, that is unreasonable under any circumstance. That is a giant red flag for the type of person you're dealing with. Hi, Opie. I commented on your last post. I'm very happy to hear you and the baby are doing well. I'm sorry for all the other crap that happened. You don't deserve that. But right now you have a duty to your family. Keep contact low or none at all, for as long as you need to. I had to cut contact with my mom after she tried dragging my son into her drama. It's not easy, but the peace and quiet, I wouldn't trade for anything. Keep doing what makes you feel better and enjoy your baby. Happy holidays. Thank you so much. Now for the next story. Ex's boyfriend keeps being a jerk just because my son isn't his. For starters, I went out with this girl, Sonia, for a few months. I was always busy with work and only saw her whenever I had free time, which wasn't a lot. We only went out a few months before it ended. Then less than a year later, Sonia called me out of the blue to tell me she thinks her 1-month-old son might be mine. That's when I learned she had a boyfriend around the time we were dating, because the guy believed he was the father up until recently. Apparently, he found out she was cheating and demanded a paternity test. When they learned he wasn't the father, she reached out to me. We did a test, and it confirmed her son Jack was in fact mine. I pretty much became very involved in my son's life. To my surprise, her boyfriend Peter stuck around, and that just made things very uncomfortable when I started coming around to see my son. For a time, he just wasn't around whenever I came to visit. They're living together, and then after a couple months, we started seeing each other when I'd go. Peter would either completely ignore or openly glare whenever we were in the same room. And I get where he's coming from. I really do. I know it was a major blow, the most devastating news ever to learn Jack wasn't his. But I couldn't see why all the anger was directed at me when I didn't even know. It's been like this ever since. Even now that my son is over a year old, he still hates my guts and gives me the cold shoulder. The one thing that really became a problem since I became a part of my son's life was the fact that Peter was intentionally throwing any toys or clothes I'd buy for Jack. I know this because they don't have a lot of stuff for Jack, so how is it that everything I'd buy him would get lost? And only the things I'd buy him? Having a problem with me is fine, but getting rid of my son's things just because I bought them is completely unacceptable. And Peter always tried to play dumb, like he didn't know what I was talking about, even though his face made it so obvious. The last straw for me was last weekend. I left a quilt my mom bought for Jack on his first birthday at her apartment when I dropped him off one morning. It was raining that day, so I used the quilt to cover him. I asked for it back when I came to pick him up for the weekend, and she couldn't find it. Sonia said she left it in his room on top of his drawer that day, and now it wasn't there. Peter was there watching her look for it, and she asked him if he moved it. All he did was shrug and walked away. I finally got fed up and confronted him asking why it's always what I get him that disappears. Peter just started giving me attitude, and I basically told him I am sick of his nonsense. 1. It's not my fault he got cheated on because I didn't even know. And 2. He needs to stop disrespecting me when all I've been trying to do is be involved in my son's life. And also that whatever issues he has with me should not be taken out on my son and his things. I was pretty pissed off by the time I left, and Sonia was too for the way I talked to Peter. Nothing seems to have changed, and he's still being a jerk. I just don't know what I can do to make this easier. If we're both going to be in my son's life, I don't want him to grow up with that hostility whenever we're around each other. My fiancé is encouraging me to maybe try to hang out with him more, or really have a heart-to-heart, but honestly I doubt he'd ever be open to that. I'm at loss on what to do here. Every single thing I buy him can't continue to go missing. It's just messed up, and completely unfair to my son if he keeps up with that as he gets older. Now for the top advice. If I were you, I'd be doing what I could to get full custody of my child. That's a toxic situation. If this guy wants to stay around for your ex, he has to let go of the past, and if he can't, he shouldn't be around a child. I'd worry he'd eventually be taking out his anger on the kid. He shouldn't be around a child. I agree. I shudder to imagine how he treats the child when the OP isn't around, or, God forbid, the mother isn't there and he's alone with the kid for any length of time. The only thing I can suggest is talking to him, explaining that you had no idea and you are sorry she did that to him. But do not take it out on the boy, as it's for sure not his fault. If that doesn't work, he's always going to be a jerk, and that's that. He's aware that I didn't even know she was in a relationship with him back when we were dating. This is the only other time that I confront him about this, though. I hope that doesn't end up being the case, because I don't want this to get any uglier as my son grows up. Are they still together? Yes, they are. And honestly, I don't know why. I would have never stuck around after finding out she cheated, and wasn't even honest about who the father might be. Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you there. The issues with this I can see are, he's an idiot, and you can't reason with idiots. Or he's so in love with her, he's not going to blame her for being a terrible person, and that only leaves you. The last story is titled, My 34 female, mother 53 female, is being extremely creepy towards my son, 13 male. Please help. Me and my husband aren't our son's biological parents. We adopted him 6 years ago. Also, I'm not the greatest at expressing my thoughts, so if y'all need clarification, do let me know. My son and my mother used to spend Friday evenings together since 2017. My mom called it bonding days and always looked forward to them. After the first few times, my son didn't really want to go anymore and only went because he didn't want to make grandma upset. Because of COVID, the bonding days had to come to a pause, and my mom didn't take it well at all. She would call me, my husband and son constantly, and beg for my son to visit. My last straw was when she called me crying, saying she needed him and wanted him. I was very weirded out and blocked her on everything, made my husband and son do it as well. Fast forward to 3 days ago, she basically showed up at our house and started banging on the door begging us to let her in. My son looked scared. Hell, I was scared too. My husband managed to send her away, thanks to police threats, but she showed up again yesterday while my son was hanging out with one of his friends on the street. She was just watching them from her car. Thankfully, I spotted her and brought my son and his friend inside and basically went psycho on my mom. She was in tears by the end, and I don't think she's going to come back anytime soon. But I'm still scared. My son is absolutely terrified. He's been very quiet since, and is constantly in his room with our cat and refuses to go outside. I don't know what to do. I don't want to call the police because no matter how horrible she was, she's still my mother and I do love her. But the things she says about my son are very creepy, and he seems scared of her too. I'm at a complete loss. I know it sounds like I'm being overly dramatic, but I keep getting horrible vibes from her, and her behavior is extremely concerning. Please help. Now for the advice. You should be very open and honest with your son. Ask him if she's ever put him in a compromising situation or made him feel uncomfortable. Reassure him that all you want is the truth and is not going to be in trouble. You never know what lies groomers tell to manipulate their subject. I can't believe she hasn't already. She could have told him they'd get rid of him if he told. The fact that our son is now staying in his room and won't go outside is significant. I believe he thought he was safe at his own home, including outside on the lawns and pavements. But now even these areas have been poisoned and are no longer safe, because Grandma can drive up and get him. He feels safe in his room perhaps with the comfort of his cat. The poor kid. Makes me feel so sad. You need to extremely gently talk to your son. He is afraid of his grandma, terrified really. Perhaps talking to him in his room with a kitty standing by for comfort would be good. You have to find out why he's scared of his grandma and why he didn't want to go for bonding days after the second time. Whatever your son tells you has to be dealt with. If your mother turns out to be an abuser or to be actually violating him, you have to go to the police. Your first allegiance is to your son, not her. She could be doing things to him that have the power to absolutely destroy his soul and his life. It's extremely difficult to say this aloud, but I will definitely be going to the police if my mom has been mistreating my son. I'll talk to him using all the advice I got from all you lovely people. Thank you, truly. It really sounds like your mom has been mistreating your son. Trust your instincts. Something's very wrong here. I agree with the other commenter. You need to have a very gentle conversation with him about what goes on during bonding days. I'd recommend looking into a restraining order against your mom. Whether your son confides in you or not, he is obviously scared of her and her behavior is unacceptable. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you with the next one. Stay safe.